Greetings and welcome to Growth Hacking Show. I am your host, Muhammad Siddique. As you can see the title today, and everyone in this, what's happening in this world right now is, are we going to be okay? My guest says, yes, we are going to be okay. And he is no other than Brad Yasar. Brad, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Mohammed.
In case, yeah, thank you, Brad. In case you are watching this and you don't know who the Brad is a blockchain and cryptocurrency advisor, strategist, architect, entrepreneur, angel investor, and most importantly, family man. So, Brad, let me start with this. Where were you? What happened? Who you were surrounded with that inspired you to get into blockchain?
Wow, that's a really good question, the Genesis question. So in 2009, I had a friend who was the CTO of a startup who sent me an email, and it had three files attached to it. And he said, Brad, compile these. You're really gonna enjoy what you find here. So in my mind, I thought, okay, he's either trying to prank me and is going to take control of my computer, or this is really something that's interesting. So I created a secure instance on a machine that wasn't my main computer, just to be sure in case I lose control of it and it's a prank. And compiled the file, started running it, and it turned out that he had sent me a Bitcoin full node, a Bitcoin wallet, and a Bitcoin miner. And that was my first introduction to blockchain and to cryptocurrencies. Prior to that, I was interested in cryptology and security and things like that. But as a currency, Bitcoin was my first experience with a cryptocurrency, and from there on, I got involved with other projects. Fell in love with the idea that you could transfer value over the internet without a third party, and the rest is history.
Wonderful. That's the history. Brad, there's a big promise being made, at least in the marketing, by blockchain and cryptocurrency that this will eliminate the poverty all around the world and everyone get a kind of same the middlemen, and there are so many settling banks. They are actually kind of bleeding the money from out of poor and everybody else. Is that the myth or the real or what do you say?
Well, I want it to be real, and I think we all should. Now, cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technologies and blockchains and all these things are tools. Once you have a tool, you can use it for good, you can use it for not so good endeavors. So again, it's going to depend on how they're implemented, how they're used. Of course, by nature, when you distribute something, you're giving more power and participation to more people. A centralized model requires a central authority, a central control mechanism. A distributed model pushes that out to different entities, different people, different nodes. So by design, blockchain and distributed ledger technologies are more inclusive than a system that's just central, like Amazon web servers or something that's controlled by one entity. Now, can blockchain and cryptocurrencies be used for inclusion, to raise people out of poverty, to bring them into a new financial system, a new banking system? Absolutely. Will they be is the question. Do we have the will to really take care of each other and our fellow human beings, or it's a powerful tool? Are we going to try to use this again for just self benefit? And that's the question I don't have an answer to. But I do want to believe that more decentralized models will bring more people up, and with rising tides, more people will be better off.
That's great. So, what are the top three challenges the blockchain and cryptocurrency is facing right now in this industry before it get mass level adoption?
Um, Top three challenges, I'd say Obviously, there are technological challenges because it's a new technology and it needs to be built. So, when you're building new technologies, let's take the internet, for example. First, the internet backbone, the hardware had to be built. We had to lay, miles and miles of dark fiber so that one day we can light it up and provide bandwidth to companies and individuals who need that bandwidth. So there's the infrastructure, both hardware and software, and then there's the user experience, the Netscape moment, and adoption. The biggest challenges right now are the blockchain infrastructure projects are just getting into majority of them are just getting into the testing phase. So they're not even fully live and operational. And that, of course, is the biggest challenge. Once those are live and tested and they work, then we'll go into how do we put a nice user interface, a user experience that's something that people want to use on top of it, so that at that point people would feel more comfortable, more familiar with it. And then, of course, the third challenge is the adoption challenge. Right now, you still, in majority of the cases, because there have been leaps and bounds in this space, and you can have a credit card or a debit card that utilizes just your cryptocurrency, but it's not that prevalent. Not a lot of people know how to use it or have it. So the adoption is key, because right now most people who hold and use cryptocurrencies, including myself, so it's not about knowledge or experience or anything like that, have at some point have to go to a fiat counterparty to pay for things. Like, I cannot pay my mortgage with Bitcoin right now. It's just not a practical solution. I mean, I can do it, but it's not there. Whereas we're seeing a lot of adoption and acceptance from traditional financial institutions in regards to crypto this year, and I believe it's going to continue growing. And once people can just hold cryptocurrencies and spend them freely, exactly the same way they spend their euros, their dollars, their pounds, whatever the local currency is, then I think the adoption curve is going to go skyrocket.
Wonderful. That's amazing. Brad, we are on this conversation because Shehzad Ul Hassan, our team member, recommended us to have this conversation. So, what would you recommend the top three things to have a massive early adoption blockchain?
Could you repeat that question? I'm not sure
So what are the top three steps or strategies you have like to have people to adapt blockchain and cryptocurrency on a massive level?
Oh, well, I mean, number one is ease of use. We're very used to swiping and tapping on a screen and, wiring money, buying things. So it has to be that simple. This whole complicated alphanumeric hexadecimal uh, wallet addresses and things like that, those are huge factors, barriers to entry. So ease of use, we need to make it as easy to use as possible. Access, as you said, if we are to lift everyone up with this technology and be extremely inclusive, then we cannot base this new generation of banking and fintech and those products on old systems. So someone who can't get a bank account right now has to be able to get a wallet and start using cryptocurrencies for them to be in a better situation. So we need to work on that inclusive technologies and availability, and then finally trust in the system. There has to be both institutional and individual level trust in the technology, and that's gonna come with maturity. Because when you have markets that fluctuate more than any other traditional market fluctuates in a year in one single day, there's a lot of fear around what this crypto asset or what this platform or what this technology can do. And that's a big challenge for a lot of people to implement this, both on the consumer side, but also on the business side. You know, when you have a business and you have certain obligations, you don't want your revenue to fluctuate 20, 30% every day in either direction. That's scary. You want stability. You also don't want to worry about if someone can hack your wallet and take away all your funds, everything you earned in a month. So again, I think as there's maturity, as it's proven that these technologies are uh, safe and they are as robust as the traditional counterparties they have, whether it be a fiat currency or a traditional banking system, a SWIFT wire, or whatever you're comparing it to. At that point, I think we're going to solve a lot of the issues that a lot of the blockchain and cryptocurrency businesses face.
Definitely, definitely. That's the key part. So, Brad, you said the topic should be, today's topic should be, we are going to be okay. So tell us how, because everyone is scared.
Well, being scared is okay. You know, if you're not scared, then probably you're missing out something because these are um, turbulent times. There's a lot of change in a big system shock to all of our socioeconomic systems right now. And it's global. It's not a United States thing. It's not a Europe thing. It's not a China thing. It's not an India thing. I mean, it's global. So what are we scared of? I mean, what am I scared of? I can't speak for other people, but health, of course, pandemic. I mean, these are for the first time in my lifetime, we have a global pandemic that's unknown, misunderstood so far, and that's ravaging lives of hundreds of thousands of people that are lost right now. So I think, having a little bit of giving a little bit of attention and having a little bit scared is okay because that keeps you focused on what the challenge is. Then, of course, there's the economic challenges that ensue as a result of the measures that we're taking globally. And then on top of it, now we see civil unrests, rightfully so, protests, again, rightfully so, pop up all around the world on issues that were ingrained in our society hundreds of years ago. So these are not new issues that popped up, but because of the healthcare crisis that led to economic crisis and now social crisis, there's a lot of change that's being pushed on us that we need to adapt to. So why are we going to be okay? We're going to be okay because this is how we grow. Okay, in good times, a lot of the a lot of the things just become stale. Innovation slows down. Um, Social structures stop changing much because everyone is comfortable, regardless of where you find yourself in the system. You have a certain level of comfort, and in turbulent times, that comfort is gone. That safety net is gone. So suddenly, by human nature, we start thinking of best ways to overcome those challenges, which I believe makes us stronger and better. But we have to be resilient and we have to be adaptive. So where we're not going to be okay is if we try to go back to the old normal, if we try to keep doing the things the same way, that they have been done. Like we just realized that a completely virtual working environment is possible, and it works, and it in most instances increases productivity. A lot of the jobs that were said are impossible to do because they would break the team dynamic or whatever the reason from home are done remotely and very successfully in the past 3 months. So for me, that shows that we are able to adapt and we are able to overcome these hurdles that are thrown at us. But there are challenges that we need to adapt to and address, whether it be social, economical, political, whatever it is. We can't just take an old model and say, okay, let's try this again because it was working, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even 10 years ago. We need to think about the future. And I found myself saying this a lot lately, especially when I'm talking to an audience. But I like saying, "Be the change you want to see." Okay, don't expect your government to change. Don't expect your boss to change, your company. You change, and if you can be the change you want to see in the world, and if we all try to do that, then we will see that change because enough people will care about it and will do something about it. It starts at the individual level, then goes to communities, families, businesses, and then obviously cities, societies, countries, and globally. We need to change certain ways we do things, whether it's business or other, and adapt. But we're going to be
Wonderful. That's amazing. Adapt. Be the change you want to see it. Basically, now this is the time where everything is being changed all at once. Social, political, health, everything.
yes.
So even in this down moment, what keeps you going? Because even though you like to be positive, you like to change, adapt the change. However, I'm sure in 24, there's some moments you feel like, oh my God, I'm stuck somewhere. What keeps you going?
Um, so I'm different. I like a challenge. You
Okay.
know, I don't go into situations. This is just a personal trait. I
Yeah.
don't go into situations where I know it's easy and I can do it. I
Yeah.
try to go into the worst possible scenario and come out prevailing. It's like I pick the biggest and the meanest looking opponent and go spar with them because I want to see what my limit is and how I can be better. But aside from that, I think what keeps me going is family. You know, I have a family, and family man is in my title for a reason because they are very important, and they're the driving force for me for a lot of things. So when I look at and it's not just my immediate family. It's the family we have at the company. It's the extended family with our clients and partners, and everyone that is in our network and ecosystem. I consider them family. So those people keep me going because I think about how much stronger we are together as opposed to if I were to give up and be out of the equation, how much weaker that would make the whole ecosystem, both in my small family with my kids, as well as in my extended family with extended family members, as well as in my businesses, in my investments, everything that I touch. If I pull myself out of it and stop being scared and ineffective, those things are weaker as a result. So that keeps me going. I feel the obligation to keep going forward and keep doing what I do best, so that at least people don't need to worry about those responsibilities.
Wonderful. Brad, as you embrace challenge, I'm going to ask you a little challenging question now. So, what was your single most professional failure you had in your life? What did you learn from it? And how did you overcome?
Um, Single biggest professional failure. I'm going to talk about two. So my single biggest professional failure as an investor was investing in a country that I'm not familiar with, in an industry that I have very little inside knowledge, and hoping that everyone that I was interacting with had my best in their mind, which is never the case. So I dealt with it by losing a very large investment and learning from it. And I do recommend everyone. I mean, whenever I'm talking to an investor audience and they ask me, how do you pick your investments? How do you decide, how, what the risk is? I always say, invest in things you understand, in people You have an opportunity to get to know. Of course, you're not always going to know the people that whose companies and businesses you invest in, but uh, it's very important to understand people's motives, which is a good segue into my second biggest mistake. And my biggest mistake as an entrepreneur and a business founder owner is and has been not picking the right partners. A partnership is an extreme version of marriage. When you're married, you're sharing your life with someone, and of course, it's very important because you're spending a lot of time with them, and you're building a family, whatever the structure of that family is. When you start a business with a partner, not only you're marrying them, but you're also putting your well-being, financial, spiritual, I mean, social in their hands, because a bad partnership can affect your financial well-being, it can affect your social standing, professional standing, it can even affect your family life if the amount of stress and conflict bleeds over from work to home, which it always does. I mean, if you have a bad day at the office, you're not going to come home and be all chipper and happy about it. You're going to carry some of it. Even the best of us who can really isolate those two lives, you're going to carry some of it over. So my mistake was not picking the right partners and um, being 50-50 partners with someone is highly not recommended. I tried it. It's the buck has to stop somewhere. It's not that you may not contribute equally. You may, but for a healthy partnership, you need to have one partner who is responsible, who has the final say. They carry that burden. It's a privilege and a burden at the same time. When you're the last say in a major decision that can change the course of things, I mean, people look at it as, oh, you're the boss, it's great, but it carries a lot of weight. So I think, equal partnerships have not really yielded the desired outcome for me. And really not understanding my partner's um, goals has been a challenge. So now moving forward, I try to be both a better partner myself, communicate better, be more clear about what's important for me for this business to be successful and what I want to get out of it. No hard feelings if it doesn't work, but I don't like non-transparent relationships where you're expected to understand something that's not spoken, and if you don't, things fall apart. So I think, again, as an investor, don't invest in things you don't understand. It's a trap. Run away from it and keep your hard-earned money to things that you know that are more important to you. And as a entrepreneur, uh, be careful with who you partner with. Don't just start a business with someone because they're a family member, old friend, someone you worked with, someone you like, girlfriend, date. I mean, these are all initially they look like amazing ideas. Oh, I'm going to start a business with my 20-year-old friend. I mean, we've been through so much together. So it's going to be great. But then if you're if the reason you're starting the business is not aligned, if your expectations are completely different, then it does not work out. And I learned that the hard way. So now it's, again, very careful selection of partners and always know where the buck stops. Who is the majority owner? Who has the responsibility?
And a very great wisdom. In fact, I was listening very carefully, especially to this partnership thing, so because that's a key. I have done many partnerships in my life and many worked. and many sucked. So, so what's your new model? I understand the buck stop on one side. Is it your side or someone else's side? What's the percent wise? It's not a 50-50. What's the new recommended model based on your experience?
It depends. That's purely circumstantial on what the business is, who are the partners, is it one, is it two, is it 10, and what are the contributions? I mean, I think the most important thing is the partner who contributes the most at the beginning may not be the partner who wants to run the business.
Yeah.
So there has to be recognition of the immediate contributions, what's happening at the formation stage, and then what does it look like a year, 2 years, 5 years from now? So for me, if I'm going to be responsible for business operations, I always want to be the managing partner. I have to have the majority. So I can manage, carry that responsibility on my shoulders, and um, not have to worry about someone unnecessarily derailing the the decided path. Now, if I just want to be a silent partner, then I don't want the majority. Even
Yeah.
if I put the biggest investment of time and money, I don't want that. I want the person who is in charge to understand he's in charge. Like, here, you have 51% and I may have 20. You're in charge and you have to be responsible. You have fiduciary duties to me as a partner to make this business as successful as you can with the best of your ability. And I think these conversations are often not had at the formation stage. You know, someone says, okay, I'll put, $500,000. The other one says, oh, I want to be the CEO. And the other person says, okay, I'll build the technology and I have a team. And then they go, okay, we're all going to be equal partners, 33, 33, 33. And then as soon as the operation starts running, of course, the person who put the money but has no day-to-day visibility to operations starts getting anxious and restless, like, hey, it's been a year, what's going on here? And the person who's running the operations, if they don't do an amazing job at communicating with the other two parties, has to now be in a defensive mode because they don't have control of the company. The investor, so to speak, can just boycott, a decision or decide they don't like it, and it doesn't happen. So I think understanding who's in charge of operating and who's contributing what uh, uh, allows you to decide what the percentages are. And sometimes, if you have enough partners, a majority stake could be, less than 51%. You can say the person with the highest stake it makes the decisions because they get more votes or things like that. I mean, there are so many ways to structure a partnership, a company. The important thing is to do it right and to have clear communications and clear expectations of everyone. Like, what is your expectation? Okay, you can put 50 hours a week and you expect this to take care of you. Okay, you're putting X amount and you want to be a passive partner. You don't want day-to-day responsibilities. And these need to be discussed, clearly understood, and then the structure of the company to reflect that.
Wonderful. That's amazing, Brad. Very well thought answer. Brad, you are on growth hacking show, and what would you say to your best friends about a growth hacking show when I'm not there?
Wow, trick question at the end. I think growth hacking has lost some of its initial appeal, and the technology behind this show and the conversations you lead kind of bring back that excitement a little. So I am a fan of the Great Growth Hacking Show, and I'm generally a fan of hacking anything because it allows you to find a better way to do something compared to what was thought or what was previously done, and it's exciting. And with this show, you're able to because growth is such a universal term, you're able to touch on a lot of good topics and provide insights from thought leaders, and I'm a big fan.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Brad, anything you like to share, which I didn't get around to it?
No, I want to say, these are tough times, and it's even more difficult for certain people because of where they live and what's happening around them. And all I can say is, there's light at the end of the tunnel. All these trials and tribulations, if they don't break you, and hopefully they won't, they're going to make you a stronger, a better, more resilient person. And you should be proactively trying to do that to begin with. Don't wait till there is a pandemic or there's economic crisis to better yourself. You can take that challenge every day and say, hey, I want to do one thing, one simple thing today, but I want to do it differently and hopefully better. And that way, when these things happen, you're nimble and optimistic, and you try to tackle it that way, as opposed to the other way around, where people get depressed and it never helps.
Wonderful. Brad, we are about to wrap up. However, there's one question coming from the users. If you like to take one question, then we're done.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, wonderful. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Shehzad Ul Hassan asks, which partnership is the more secure, reliable, and long-term affected, most likely long-term beneficial? Which type of partnership is more secure, reliable, and long-term?
So the company structure?
Yeah, like when you are establishing a partnership with multiple people, what type of partnership is more secure, reliable, and long-term?
Well, that's going to depend on what jurisdiction you're in, because every country has a different variation of structure. So depending on whether you're in the United States or Pakistan or Australia, it's not going to be called the same thing. I prefer, because you want to the extent possible, shield your personal wealth from business operations, just in case. I mean, I'm on my 14th business. Half of them failed. It's not. You don't always, even if you go in with the best partners, with the best intentions, you don't always find the right market fit, right timing, right product. So some businesses fail. You don't want that failure to bleed over to your personal life. So whatever jurisdiction you're in, and a limited model where the liabilities are limited to the assets of the company is, I think, best for first-time entrepreneurs or for people testing out, trying new things that may not, there's no guaranteed success. And then if you long-term, if you want to go public or sell your company, of course, then a corporation model where you issue shares is better suited for that long-term vision. If you start obviously with a small partnership, you can always convert it later. So I would say, most of the time, I would recommend starting with a limited model, whether it's a anonymous company or limited liability company or whatever it's called in your country jurisdiction. And then if you see growth and you get to the growth stage, just convert it to a share-bearing corporate structure, so that if you decide to sell it, it's much easier. If you decide to buy out some early investors, partners, whomever want to have an exit, it's much easier. And then you can go public, of course, because you already have the ledger and the share structure in place. Short-term protection, long-term exit.
Brad, we are about to wrap up. What would you say as a final word?
We're all going to be okay.
We are all going to be okay. Brad,
Yes.
thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today on the behalf of Growth Hacking Show and our entire community. We really, really appreciate you. This is Muhammad Siddique signing off from Atlanta, Georgia. Wishing you all the best and look forward to speaking with you soon with another guest.